Thank you so much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswati Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudirayat.
Tato Jayamudirayat.
Nastapreshu Badreshu.
Nasapreshva Bhadrishu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavate Sevaya.
Bhagavati Utamashloke.
Bhagavate Uttam Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nashti.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremest human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by ordinary service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, established as an irrevocable fact. All right, Hare Krishna Prabhus. Hare Krishna. Yeah. All right, so continuing on with our Maharaj Prithu Leela here, but we're on a new chapter, instructions by Prithu Maharaj. So Canto 4, Chapter 21, and we'll be doing text 8, but since 8 has no purport, we're just going back to Sutta Goswami's conversation with the sages. We'll be going again to, we'll be also covering text 9. Okay. Sutta Vacha.
Sutta Vacha.
Karari Raja Yaso Vijambitam.
Karari Raja Yaso Vijambitam.
Gunarashesha Gunatva Sambhajitam.
Gunarashesha Gunavat Sambhajitam.
Sata Mahabhagavata Sadaspati.
Sata Mahabhagavata Sadaspati.
Kosaravim Pragrinantam Achayan.
Kosaravim Pragrinantam.
Tarari Rajasya Sovijib. Sorry. Tarari Rajasya Yasho Vijivitam. Gunarashesha Gunatva Sambhajitam. Shata Mahabhagavata Saraspate. Kosaravim Pragrinantam Archayan. Tarari Rajasya Yasho Vijambitam. Gunarashesha Gunatvat Sambhijitam. Shata Mahabhagavata Saraspate. Kosaravim Pragrinantam Achayan. Alright guys, take it away.
Sutta Vacha. Tarari Rajasya Yasho Vijambitam. Gunarashasha Gunavat Sambhajitam. Shatama Bhagavata Saraswati. Kosharavim Pragvinantamacharyam
Tadadi Raja Shayasho Vijimbitam
Narayana Saryasovichimpitam
Gunera Shashe Gunavasavajitam
Gunayashashiravasamaditam
Shaka Mahabhagavata Sarasvate
Shadhamavata Sarashpate
Kasha Ravas Prabhinatamajayam
Kasharavim
All right. Word for word. Sutta Vacha. Sutta Goswami said, Tat, that, Adi Rajasya, the original king, Yashaha, reputation, Vijambitam, highly qualified, Gonai, by qualities, Asheshai, unlimited, Gunavat, fittingly, Sambhajitam, being praised, Shata, Vidura. Or the Bengalis would say kata, because they take out that s whenever there's the, like, you'll hear Prabhupada say sometimes katriya, like that. Bhagavata, the great saintly devotee. Siddhapati, leader of the great sages. Kosharavim, unto Maitreya. Praha, said. Grinantam, while talking. Acharyan, offering all respectful obeisances. Translation. Sutta Goswami continued, O Sanaka, leader of the great sages. O Shanaka, leader of the great sages. I can't speak today. After hearing Maitreya speak about the various activities of King Prithu, the original king, who is fully qualified, glorified, and widely praised all over the world, Vidura, the great devotee, very submissively worshipped Maitreya Rishi and asked him the following question. Please repeat. Sutta Goswami continued. O Shanaka, leader of the great sages. After hearing Maitreya speak about the various activities of King Prithu, the original king, who was fully qualified, glorified, and widely praised all over the world, Vidura, the great devotee, submissively worshipped Maitreya Rishi and asked him the following question. So here we're getting to this point in the pastime where the basic story of King Prithu and how he came to rule over the earth and what he did has already been told. But the devotees of the Lord, they always constantly want to hear about the glories of the Lord's devotees. Because by hearing about the glories of the Lord's devotees, one becomes purified and one develops, the intense desire to develop the qualities of those devotees if they don't already have them. But at the same time, Krishna loves to hear his devotees glorified. So wherever the devotees of the Lord are being glorified, Krishna is there. And also we can see here that there's being set an example here. Vidura, he's submissively inquiring from Maitreya Rishi, wanting to know more about Prithu Maharaj. So he's also setting the example here of a disciple with spiritual master bowing down before the spiritual master, worshiping them, and doing what? Inquiring submissively. Yeah. So Vidura here, he's setting this example by inquiring from Acharya Rishi very submissively. He wants to hear further about King Prithu. He wants to hear more about King Prithu. So here we're seeing here the duties of a disciple with the spiritual master, to bow down before the spiritual master, worship them, and inquire from them. Try to get all the details in. Trying to ask every question that can possibly be asked, not only for one's benefit, one's own purification, but also for the benefit of others as well. We learn so much through these pastimes, as in Kali Yuga, and they help us so much in our spiritual lives. But we wouldn't have this if we didn't have people going and bowing down before the spiritual master, inquiring submissively, asking these questions. If he would have just had the attitude, okay, yeah, I got it, okay, next, the nectar wouldn't be churned. And that's another point. When you start talking Krishna Katha, more nectar and more nectar and more nectar starts to come out, more questions, you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And you'll see that as you read Bhagavatam, the more you read it, and this is really with any Prabhupada's books in general, that you'll find yourself going deeper and having more questions that you didn't have in the very beginning of your reading. I remember when Kirtaneshwar did that class in El Paso. I think you did 5:16 of Bhagavad Gita, and I read that verse with everybody else. But I had this thought in my mind: have I ever read this verse? Like, have you guys ever had that feeling you're reading Prabhupada's books? Have I ever read this before? And I've read Bhagavad Gita all the way through. I don't know how many times now, I've lost count. But that's what happens when you get into this. The nectar gets churned even more. You go deeper. It's always fresh, always new. So that's what we're seeing here. Vidura is wanting to inquire more from Acharya Rishi about Prithu Maharaj. And so for this reason, we got another chapter about Prithu Maharaj before we move on. So since there's no purport here, we'll further go on to text 9. And I'll just chant it the best I can and read the verse in purport. Vidura vacha shovikshitam patur vipre labdeshesha shurahana vriratsa vaishnavam tejo bhavor yabyam dudohadyam. Sorry. Vidura translation. Vidura said, "My dear Brahmana Maitreya, it is very enlightening to understand that King Prithu was enthroned by the great sages and brahmanas. All the demigods presented him with innumerable gifts, and he also expanded his influence upon personally receiving strength from Lord Vishnu. Thus, he greatly developed the earth." Purport. Because Prithu Maharaj was an empowered incarnation of Lord Vishnu and was naturally a great Vaishnava devotee of the Lord, all the demigods were pleased with him and presented different gifts to help him in exercising his royal power. And the great sages and saintly persons also joined in his coronation. Thus, blessed by them, he ruled over the earth and exploited its resources for the greatest satisfaction of the people in general. It's an interesting word, exploited here. This has already been explained in the previous chapters regarding the activities of King Prithu. As will be apparent from the next verse, every executive head of state should follow in the footsteps of Maharaj Prithu in ruling over his kingdom. Regardless of whether the chief executive is a king or president, or whether the government is monarchical or democratic, this process is so perfect that if it is followed, everyone will become happy, and thus it will be very easy for all to execute devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When we get into Nam Jana Shlakaya Chakshram and Samina Tasma Shigaru Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yana Putale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya Didati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shiguru Shiyata Parakamalam Shigurun Vaishnavam Shta Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Ragnaptam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Latita Shri Vishakam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagapase Gopesha Gopakanta Radhakanta Namostate Tata Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustate Devi Pranamami Haripe Pancha Kalpatruvesha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhav Nevyo Vaishavivyo Namanama Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giradhara Shri Asari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so we just read in text 8 that Vidura had further questions. But as common in Srimad Bhagavatam, we have several texts before he actually gets to the question. Because usually there's always a glorification in between. You'll see this over and over again. So right here, Vidura, he's giving this glorification of Prithu Maharaj, that he was this wonderful leader enthroned by the great sages and the brahmanas. All the demigods came and presented him with gifts. You know, he used the earth's resources for satisfying all the people, and he was a great devotee of the Lord. So one of the things that we can learn many things from Maharaj Prithu's rule, but one of the things that we also see here is Maharaj Prithu was creating the ideal environment for citizens to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. As Prabhupada mentioned at the very end of this purport, that if regardless of whether the chief executive, the king, president, if it's a democratic government or whatever, this process is so perfect that if it is followed by them, everyone will become happy and it'll be easy for everyone to execute devotional service. So to have, for it to be very easy for everyone to execute devotional service in the world, the leaders themselves have to work on creating the ideal environment for everyone to execute devotional service, which is why very often you'll see the tradition, I should say, let me rephrase my words, was that when a king was being brought up, you know, they were raised from the very beginning of their life that, okay, one day you're going to be king. They were taught, they had instructors. So we can see that, you know, Arjuna, Yudhishthira, Bhima, they all had an instructing guru, and they all were learning from older people, you know, how to rule the kingdom one day. So people were trained up from the very early age of life. It wasn't like now where you see, you know, I remember being shocked when they announced Donald Trump was running for president, because I was like, wasn't this the guy that had a reality TV show a few years ago? Isn't that the like apprentice guy? You're fired. And like, why is this guy running for president? So we can see that in the actual Vedic society, you didn't have this type of situation where a guy just wakes up one morning and is like, okay, I'm rich, I have power, I have influence, I have many businesses, I know how to manipulate the people of a particular party system, so therefore I think I'm going to run for president. But no, it was a great like responsibility that the little boy prince was being trained up from the very early age of life how to run a kingdom and how to engage everyone in such a way that. Hare Krishna. Okay, so as I was saying, so the little boy prince is being trained up in such a way that, okay, I have to run this kingdom one day. and I have to engage all the citizens in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in order to do that, I had to create the ideal environment. So as we learned in the previous chapter, Maharaj Prithu, he did that. We could see that when he first came to his rule, uh, the earth wasn't producing because Dana had stopped all the sacrifices from the Brahmanas. And when that happened, the earth withheld. And still, when the sacrifices were started up again, the earth still wasn't producing. So Prithvi Maharaj took things in his own hands. And he was like, all right. And we had that whole pastime where, the earth turned into a cow, ran away from him. He was going after her to chastise her. And why was he trying to chastise her? Because the citizens needed to eat. Because if they didn't have proper substance, how are the Brahmanas going to be able to do their sacrifices? How are you going to train up? How are you going to train up the next king? How are you going to train up the next Vaishyas, etc., etc., etc.? So he started off by, giving them the basic necessities. Started off by reestablishing the sacrifices. Thus, and then did the Ashvamedha Yajna, the 99 horse sacrifice. We all know he was going for 100, but he didn't quite make it. But it doesn't really matter because Vishnu was satisfied in the end. And when Vishnu is satisfied, even if you don't actually attain your goal or what is considered perfection, quote unquote, if Krishna is satisfied, everything is complete. You don't see this really anywhere else in the material world. Somebody says, okay, you got to pay me this much amount of money. It's like, okay, you got to do this. But in devotional service, all you have to do is satisfy Krishna. And even if you don't quietly attain to what you want to attain to, you get perfection regardless because Krishna is ultimately satisfied. So, and another thing we can also learn from this purport, besides the fact that Prithvi Maharaj created this ideal environment, was that when one is engaging in the devotional service of the Lord, a pure devotee, when he's trying to please Krishna by his activities, as Prithvi Maharaj was doing, and Prithvi Maharaj wasn't just trying to please Krishna by his activities, but also trying to help everybody else make advancement in devotional service. So as Krishna tells us in Bhagavad Gita, no one else is more dear to me than one who gives this secret. So he says the secret to devotees, or we translate this as giving this knowledge to others, helping others make advancement. You attract Krishna very easily. And when you get Krishna's favor, you get all the other demigods' favor automatically. Because all the other demigods are ultimately working for Krishna. They're Krishna's, right-hand man. So you have a demigod in charge of the sun, demigod in charge of the moon. We have demigods in charge of our various bodies. There's we think, okay, I'm moving my hand, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But actually, really, I'm being allowed to move my arm right now. But I'm being allowed to. Something could happen and I can no longer be able to move my arm. So it's not me doing it. I'm actually being allowed. There's another entity there that's in control. So many people, when they are trying to, get what they want out of life, they'll go to this demigod, they'll go to that demigod. As we can see with Hiranyakashipu, he went to Brahma and he did so many austerities for many, many, many thousands of years, trying to get the attention of Lord Brahma. It's said, I saw the picture of, where I think you've all seen where Hiranyakashipu, his body is turning into like a skeleton because he's being eaten by ants, because in his yoga, he's staying in one position for so many years. And finally, he gets the attention of Lord Brahma. But what ultimately happens to him in the end? The Lord incarnates as Hiranyakashipu, as Nishigadev, sorry, my bad, and takes everything away from him. So we can see that when you get some sort of benediction from a demigod, it can be taken away from you. Just like Karna. Karna, he actually was immortal because he had been given armor from his father, the sun god. So Karna had this armor and he had these earrings from his father, Surya. And he was undefeatable in battle. But ultimately what happened in this situation is that Arjuna's, I guess we could say biological father, that's what we call it nowadays, Indra, he favored Arjuna. So he devised a plan to get Karna's armor and earrings by going and begging charity from him. Because Karna had this thing, he had this very Kshatriya-like attitude that he would give charity to whoever asked him. So whatever anybody asked of him, he would give them. That was kind of like his way. And Kshatriyas, they also given charity a lot. So what happened is that Indra came to him and begged, said, "Give me your armor and give me your earrings." And the night before, Surya even tried to stop Karna. And he came to Karna and he told Karna in a dream, "Tomorrow, Indra will come and he's going to ask you for your armor and your earrings. So don't give it to him. Because this thing right here would have made Karna, immortal. Arjuna wouldn't have been able to defeat him." And it is even argued by some that Karna was just as good as Arjuna in terms of archery. But the thing is, Arjuna had Krishna on his side. So we can see that even though Karna got this benediction from Surya, ultimately Indra came and he begged his armor, and of course Karna, being the great charitable person that he was, even though he was also very demoniac, some of his qualities too. He gave it to Indra, gave his earrings, lost his armor. And at the same time, he also had this curse from his spiritual master, because he lied to his spiritual master Parashuram, that he would forget his knowledge, when he needed it the most. So, and we all know that story. Karna, he lied to Parashuram about what his caste was, and then later when Parashuram found out about it, he gave him that curse. And so, what can we learn from this? You can have the favor of so many personalities, so many great personalities, but if you don't ultimately have the favor of Krishna, it can all be taken away from you. However, if you have the favor of Krishna and you're doing what Krishna wants you to do, even if somebody comes and apparently tries to take it away from you, Krishna will restore everything back to how it should be when you're going along the path of what he wants you to do. And we saw this many times with the Pandavas. When they came back to Hastinapur, Dhritarashtra was ruling the kingdom and ultimately didn't want to give the Pandavas their kingdom because he had a little bit of a soft side. That was a bit of an understatement for his son Duryodhana. And so later, ultimately, he decided, okay, we'll cut it in half. And they give the Pandavas the worst half, the barren half, the half that doesn't produce anything. It was like maybe like desert or just barren land. It's like somebody gives you land and it's just kind of like worthless, like that type of land. However, they accepted it. And even though they weren't getting their full kingdom, they just got that one really, really bad half. By Krishna's arrangement, the land became fruitful. Mayadhanava came and built a palace for them. And it actually became more opulent than the lands that Duryodhana had, and more popular. People were coming to see them, visit them, and it was more beautiful because what the Pandavas were doing was what Krishna wanted them to do. And then we can also see that Duryodhana again, tried to take that away. And he organized this whole gambling match. And it wasn't like these two just got in a room and said, all right, let's roll dice. He had a whole assembly hall constructed for it. Can you imagine? And it wasn't like just some small building either. It was probably something that looked a little bit better than the Roman Colosseum in its heyday. You know, that big place in Rome where they had the gladiator matches and whatnot. Um, so anyway, he had this whole citadel constructed for this gambling match, and managed to cheat the Pandavas out of everything. Take it away again. All right, you go to the forest for 12 years, and then you stay incognito for one. And so the Pandavas were going through all this hardship. Man, like not only did we not get our lands, we got one half, and then that was taken away from us. Now what? So, but later we can see that at the end of the 13 years, then they went back. Just give us 5 villages. We have to rule something because we're Kshatriyas. Because according to the Varnashram system, a Kshatriya, they have to rule. That's their nature. So, and then they said, no, we won't give you anything. So ultimately, we can see that the battle Kshetra happened. And again, Krishna restored the Pandavas, their kingdom and everything. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that, you can try to individually get the demigod's attention. There was that one personality. I keep forgetting his name. I forget his name every single time. It starts with a V, I think. He was cutting off his own flesh to get the attention of Indra, to get the attention of Shiva. Do you remember Vrikasura? That's what I thought. And I was like, I don't know, that can't be it, but it was Vrikasura. Yeah, he's cutting off his flesh to get the attention of Shiva. And then that's such a painful thing. You can imagine cutting your own flesh, throwing in the fire, just to get his attention, just to get some benediction. Hiranyakashipu, he did all these austerities for so many years to get the attention of Lord Brahma, and various other personalities doing all these things to get the attention of the demigods. But yet we can see that Prithu Maharaj, just by being a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and doing his duty, not just by being a devotee, but doing his duty as a king and trying to help others, trying to help his citizens make advancement in devotional service. The demigods, they're coming automatically, and they're presenting him with innumerable gifts. He didn't have to go to them. In fact, one of the things, going back to Karna, one of the things that Karna told his father, Surya, when Surya told him, you don't give your armor to Indra when he comes to beg for you. Karna said, millions of people around the world are begging Indra, please, please accept my offerings. And yet Indra is coming to me to ask for something? How can I not give it to him? So we could just see how so many people, around the world, they want these attention of the demigods. And here in the West, we don't worship demigods, but there can be this demigod-like mentality with God. Oh God, please give me this, please do this for me, I'll give you this, you do that for me. So even though we don't actually worship the demigods, that mentality is still there. I remember when I was in Mayapur during Durga Puja. And it's amazing. Nobody comes to work on Durga Puja. They're all doing their various activities. I had a lady that was coming and cleaning my house, and I noticed that for 3 days she didn't show up. I said, "What's going on?" They said, "Oh, Durga Puja," and you hear this Bollywood music playing all night. It's funny. They'll be like out in the fields, and they'll be having these parties and these different things for. I'm not exactly sure what they do because I never got involved in it.
Big stick temple.
big stick temples and all these things. And so yeah, trying to get the blessings of Durga, because Durga, she is in charge of this material energy. So they want an easier time. So, but for the devotees, these things come naturally. We see this also in the case of Jada Bharat. When he was a great devotee of the Lord. But some Kali worshippers kidnapped him, and they were going to sacrifice him to Kali. So they go and they kidnap him, and they think he's kind of stupid because he pretended to be dumb so that he wouldn't get entangled in material affairs. And they take him, they feed him very nicely, bathe him, plump him up, and all these things. And then when they go, they put him on the altar, and they're going to kill him. He doesn't even protest. He doesn't even try to run away. And before they can chop off his head, Kali immediately comes out and grabs a sword and slashes all of them. And her associates come out. And it's described that actually, I probably shouldn't say what is described, what happens next. You can read it in the Bhagavatam. Actually, have we already gotten there? No, we haven't gotten there yet. Yeah, we'll get there eventually in about 2 years. we'll get to that pastime. But anyway, so that's another example of how the demigods they will come to bless the devotee of the Lord. So the devotee of the Lord doesn't need to make any separate endeavor. Krishna explains this to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that whatever benefit the demigods are giving Arjuna are actually bestowed by me alone. So therefore, all one needs to do is just satisfy Krishna, and everything else that is needed for one's service, for one's advancement, that will automatically come. We can see from these pastimes. But however, if one is not a saintly king or pious in any way, you might attain the position of a great monarch, but you can be easily overthrown. The last Tsar of Russia was Nicholas II, Nicholas Romanov. And his family had ruled Russia for 300 years. So this was the last monarch of Russia before Lenin took over. And what they were trained to believe, or what he believed, was that I have been divinely appointed by God to rule. This is my divine right, and being taught, okay, this is right. Nobody can take this away from you. You are the leader of the people. You are the Pope. You are everything. That was like the Tsars. They had this huge role. But unlike the devotees, unlike the great kings in the Bhagavatam, he didn't have brahmanas advising him. And this is the thing about when a devotee is ruling, when you have an actual Kshatriya king, and they have, saintly people, brahmanas that come and advise them, how they should do, what decisions they should make. That's their job, so they can make intelligent decisions. But however, this guy, Nicholas II, he had more like Kamsa's advisors, advising him very, very badly. So it's described that during his coronation, there was a stampede in the street, and so many people were killed. And he was advised not to do anything about it. Yeah. Oh, don't worry, this stuff will sort itself out. It'll be all right. So that made the people a little upset. And then later, there was really bad working conditions. And the workers, they were actually devoted to the Tsar. So they all they're going to the palace to ask the Tsar, please help our working conditions. So it was a peaceful protest. But they were actually shot by the Tsar's guards. And that further angered the people. And the Tsar himself I don't think he actually knew that he didn't order them to shoot them, but he didn't handle that in the right way. So that further angered the people. And then World War I came, and Russia wasn't doing so good in World War I. So that was kind of like the last straw. And later, the people started revolting, and the people turned on the monarchy, and the people they were raiding the palace, and they were ready to overthrow him. So he had to abdicate. And then when he abdicated, whenever there's like an overthrow government like this, there's various groups fighting for power. So the group that came into power, they kidnapped the original royal family, put them in a house somewhere, kept them for about a year. So this guy went from this high position to now this very low position. He's kept in this house like a prisoner with his family, things like this. And then, as quite often what happens when you're trying to establish a new form of government and then one small government kind of takes over, then another group comes in and tries to take over that group. So that was happening. And the other group that was trying to take over this group, they were a little bit more favorable to the monarch. So ultimately, what did this group that was currently in power, that was losing, what did they do? They then took the whole original royal family of Russia and they executed them all. And so that's how the monarch of Russia ended. So it shows that when one's not a devotee of the Lord, one doesn't have good advisors, Brahmana advisors, you can get this very glorious position, but in one instance, it can all be taken away from you. Things can turn very inauspicious very quickly, as we can see what happened in this situation. So the point here is that we can see being a devotee of the Lord, being saintly, like Prithu Maharaj, it can get you on the demigod's A-list. But being a modern Kali Yuga politician, you might wind up on Epstein's list, which is not where you want to be. As we can see, what's come out in the news, all these politicians on Epstein's list. I probably shouldn't say that out loud. YouTube will then take down this video. So we can't all be kings like Prithu Maharaj, but we can follow in the footsteps of Prithu Maharaj. That the essence of this instruction here is to be a devotee of the Lord, do one's duty for the Lord, and help others make advancement in devotional service, make an environment very peaceful so that people can make advancement. You see here in the temple, it's very easy. It's easy. It's easier to make advancement in Krishna consciousness because you have devotees around you. When you're in the good association, it's easy. It's easier to be a devotee. You have people keeping you in check, so you don't follow your mind, go off with your mind. But when you're away from the devotees, it can be a little bit more challenging. You have to always keep contact with devotees in your situation, which is why we have so many Zoom classes across the world now. I know people that they're now in situations where they're not with devotees, so they have Zoom sanghas to keep themselves enlivened and things like this. So even though we can't all be like Prithu Maharaj, and this story sounds kind of fantastic, and you're just like, how is this happening? These great beings coming down, giving him gifts, and these sages and these brahmanas and all this opulence, and he leveled the earth, and I can't be that. But yeah, we can develop the qualities of Prithu Maharaj, because ultimately we all have the qualities of devotees, the devotee within us. We just have to develop them. It's already there. And at the same time, we can try to please Krishna with our duty, and we can try to help others, make advancement in devotional service. So we can take that essence from this purport, and maybe don't get so caught up in all the opulence thing. I can never be Prithu, but just take the very essence, and that's what you can be. That's what you can do. So. Pancha kalpatrubhesha kripa sindhuvecha patisnam bhavnebhyo vaishnavyo namaha. Questions or comments? I'll let you go first.
So my question's pretty mundane, but you're talking about that a big, huge building was built for the gambling match. And so I was just curious, was there like spectators other than the people that were directly involved and affected by the results of this gambling match?
When I saw it on a video, it appeared that way. That there were people watching. And I assume that there probably would be, because it's described in the Mahabharata, the big hall that was built. So
Why else would you?
yeah, I mean, why else? Yeah. People got together to watch Great Kings. I mean, exactly who was allowed and who wasn't, I don't know.
Wow, that is some serious gambling.
Yeah, it was. They didn't have Netflix, Amazon Prime back then. You know?
I'm gonna watch the Yahtzee finals.
They
Big screen, show the dice.
didn't have the Olympics. Come watch the dice rolling champions. Yes, Prabhu.
Nice class. Thank you very much. I was just sharing the nectar. I was thinking about you're talking about how Arjuna had Krishna on his side, and so therefore Arjuna was able to win. And even though the other side was so, and they had Bhishma, still they lost. I was thinking, I think it's Somadatta who had planned and trapped Abhimanyu.
Yeah.
And so then, Arjuna made the vow that I'm going to kill Somadatta today. So, they were like, Dhritarashtra was like, oh, this is great. Or he said, if I'm going to kill Somadatta, I'm going to kill myself.
Mm.
And so then Dhritarashtra was delighted. He said, this is awesome because we'll just put Somadatta in the back. And there's no way that, Arjuna will be able to kill him.
Mm.
And, he said Bhishma Dev just put his head down because he understood that once Arjuna had made that vow, there was no hope for Somadatta.
Mm.
And so, even though he was protected by the entire Kaurava army, Arjuna literally fought his way through the entire army and, killed Somadatta. And it said that after that, the hearts of the Kauravas were broken. They lost the will to fight after that. The rest of the battle was like downhill for them because, Arjuna just pretty much killed them all with just one day, like going through the army. So it's saying that, when Krishna's on your side, what can stop you? And even though he was protected by the whole Kaurava army, still he had no hope against Arjuna because Arjuna was empowered by Krishna.
Yeah. What is that Bengali saying?
Rake Krishna Mare Ke, Mare Krishna Rake Ke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else? Well, it's also quite interesting to note that Arjuna did all these wonderful things when Krishna was present, but as soon as Krishna wrapped up his pastimes and he went back to the spiritual world, or moved on, Arjuna couldn't even lift his Gandiva bow, and so we learn from this story that really the power that we get is from Krishna. And when Krishna says, okay, time is up, and we can see that Krishna left, and then the Pandavas they also retired timely. So one's power is not independent of Krishna. And we even see this with the family members of the Yadu dynasty. They had all this influence, they had all this wealth, they had all this opulence, but Krishna didn't let them stay with it. When he went, he arranged about that they also went. So it's a very humbling pastime too, that one can do great things when they're empowered, but as soon as Krishna's like, okay, next thing, we're going to the next thing, you gotta go. So, all right. Anything else, guys? All right. Well, it's about time for your breakfast, so we'll just stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.